Security! Remove this woman immediately! Rebecca Stone's voice cut through the marble lobby like a blade. The water bottle tilted. Clear liquid arced through the air in slow motion. Aaliyah Carter's eyes widened as the cold stream splashed across her face, soaking her silk blouse, dripping from her chin onto expensive leather shoes. "People like you don't belong here," Rebecca sneered, her empty bottle still raised like a weapon. 15 employees stood frozen in the corporate lobby of Carter Tech Solutions. Phone cameras captured every drop. The elegant black woman in business attire said nothing, just stood there, water streaming down her face, wedding ring catching the afternoon light. Rebecca smiled triumphantly. She had no idea she'd just destroyed her career in 10 seconds. Have you ever watched someone make the worst mistake of their life without realizing it? 12 minutes until the CEO meeting. 30 minutes earlier, Aaliyah Washington, she used her maiden name at work, had parked her black Tesla in the visitor section of Carter Tech Solutions. The license plate read, DNA Love, an anniversary gift from her husband 3 years ago. She clutched a handmade lunch container, wrapped in elegant silver paper. Inside, David's favorite Korean bulgogi, prepared at 5 a.m. before he left for his morning conference calls. Today marked their 5th wedding anniversary, and she wanted to surprise him at his office. The marble lobby gleamed under afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Aaliyah approached the reception desk, her heels clicking against polished stone. "Excuse me," she said to Sarah, the young receptionist. "I'm here to see David Carter. It's personal." Sarah looked up from her computer screen. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" "No, but I'm sorry." Rebecca Stone materialized beside the desk like a storm cloud. The head of human resources stood tall in her charcoal suit, arms crossed, surveying Aaliyah from head to toe. "The CEO doesn't meet with unscheduled visitors." Aaliyah smiled politely. "I understand, but this is a special occasion. Could you please—" "Special occasion?" Rebecca's voice dripped with skepticism. "What's your business with Mr. Carter?" "It's personal," Aaliyah repeated, adjusting her Hermes Kelly bag. The leather cost more than most people's monthly salary, but Rebecca didn't seem to notice. Or care. Personal. Rebecca rolled her eyes theatrically, ensuring nearby employees could see her performance. "Let me guess. Another woman with personal business trying to get to our wealthy executives." Heat crept up Aaliyah's neck. She'd dealt with this before. Assumptions, stereotypes, the automatic dismissal. But never this blatantly. Never this publicly. "I'm his wife," she said quietly. Rebecca laughed, sharp, cutting. "His wife? David Carter's wife?" She gestured dramatically. "Do you see any resemblance here, people?" 3 employees had stopped to watch, then 5, then 8. Phones appeared in hands like flowers blooming in spring. "Women like you," Rebecca continued, her voice rising for her audience, "always have ulterior motives. Gold diggers, social climbers, whatever you want to call yourselves." Aaliyah's fingers tightened on her bag strap. Inside her purse, her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Looking forward to lunch. Love you." "Ma'am." Jerome, the security guard, approached reluctantly. He'd worked here 3 years and knew all the executives' families from company picnics. Something about this woman looked familiar, but Rebecca was his supervisor's boss. "Jerome, perfect timing," Rebecca announced. "Please escort this woman out. She's harassing our staff." "I'm not harassing anyone," Aaliyah said, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "I brought my husband lunch for our anniversary." She pulled out her phone, showing the lock screen, a photo of her and David at last year's company Christmas party. His arm wrapped around her waist, both smiling at the camera. Rebecca barely glanced at it. "Photoshopped nonsense. You people are so desperate these days." The words hit like physical blows. You people. Aaliyah had earned her MBA from Wharton, worked 6 years in corporate consulting before marriage. She spoke 3 languages, held a black belt in Taekwondo, and volunteered with literacy programs every weekend. But to Rebecca Stone, she was just you people. "Security cameras are recording this," whispered Martha, a long-time administrative assistant. She'd worked here 12 years, remembered when David started dating Aaliyah, had seen their engagement photos on his desk. Rebecca whirled around. "Recording what? Me protecting our executives from opportunists?" More employees gathered. The lunch crowd returned from the cafeteria, interns checking their phones, a cluster of software developers drawn by the commotion. Aaliyah checked her watch, 3:10 p.m. David's board meeting would end in 5 minutes. She'd planned to surprise him when he came downstairs for their scheduled lunch. "Look," she said, pulling out her car keys. The Tesla key fob caught the light, engraved with DNA Forever in elegant script. "I can call him right now?" "Don't you dare disturb Mr. Carter with your games," Rebecca snapped. She turned to Jerome. "I said remove her, now." Jerome shifted uncomfortably. Company policy required him to follow HR directives. But something felt wrong here. Very wrong. "Ma'am," he said gently to Aaliyah, "maybe you could schedule an appointment." "She's not scheduling anything," Rebecca interrupted. "This is what happens when people don't know their place." The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Several employees exchanged glances. 2 junior developers started recording on their phones. Aaliyah's wedding ring, a custom design David had created just for her, caught the light as she steadied herself against the reception desk. The same ring David wore on his left hand, visible in every company photo, every board meeting, every press conference. But Rebecca Stone had never paid attention to details like that. 8 minutes until the anniversary surprise. "I'm calling security," Rebecca announced, though Jerome stood right beside her. "Real security, not just building security." She meant police. Aaliyah felt the walls closing in. 15 people were watching, camera recording. Her anniversary surprise crumbled into public humiliation. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just call David. Tell him Aaliyah is here." Rebecca smiled coldly, reached into the small refrigerator behind the reception desk where staff kept their drinks, pulled out a water bottle. "No," she said, unscrewing the cap. "You're leaving now. 5 minutes until the CEO meeting ends." The water hit Aaliyah's face with shocking coldness. 16 ounces of liquid humiliation streaming down her cheeks, soaking her silk blouse, pooling at her feet on the marble floor. Silence. 15 employees stood frozen in the lobby. Phone cameras captured every droplet. The only sound was water dripping onto leather, steady as a metronome counting down to disaster. Rebecca Stone smiled, still holding the empty bottle like a trophy. "That," she announced to her captive audience, "is how we handle trespassers at Carter Tech Solutions." Aaliyah stood motionless, water streaming from her chin. Her carefully applied makeup ran in dark rivulets. The handmade lunch container slipped from her wet fingers, clattering against marble with a sound that made everyone wince. "Oh my God," whispered Sarah at reception. "Did you really just—" "I did what needed to be done," Rebecca cut her off. She turned to address the growing crowd, her voice amplifying off the glass walls. "Let this be a lesson. We protect our executives from people who think they can waltz in here making demands." Jerome, the security guard, looked physically ill. His face had gone ashen, hands trembling slightly at his sides. "Ms. Stone, maybe we should call—" "Should what?" Rebecca's voice echoed through the space. "Show weakness? Let every gold digger in the city know they can target our CEO?" More employees emerged from elevators, drawn by the commotion like moths to flame. The afternoon shift change brought fresh witnesses. Someone's phone buzzed with an incoming Instagram Live notification, 827 viewers, and climbing rapidly. A junior developer named Kevin held his phone steady, live streaming the entire scene. The comment section exploded. "Is this real? Someone's getting fired. This is insane." This woman, Rebecca gestured at Aaliyah like she was evidence in a trial, claims to be David Carter's wife. Look at her. Does she look like CEO material to you? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some uncomfortable shifting from longtime employees. A few nods from newer hires who didn't know better. The division was clear. Those who'd been here long enough to know the truth, and those who hadn't. But Martha, the longtime administrative assistant, stepped forward. Her face was pale with horror, hands shaking as she clutched her tablet. Rebecca, I really think you should know. Know what? Rebecca whirled on her like a predator sensing weakness. That we should cater to every woman with a sob story and fake photos? Martha's mouth opened, then closed. She'd worked here for 12 years, had answered David's phones, scheduled his appointments, ordered flowers for Aaliyah's birthday each year. She knew exactly who stood dripping in their lobby. But Rebecca Stone had power. Martha had a mortgage, college tuition payments for her daughter, and health insurance that covered her mother's medications. She stepped back into the crowd, eyes downcast with shame. 4 minutes remaining. The live stream viewer count hit 1,200. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read them. Parker Tech's scandal started trending on Twitter. Local news blogs were already picking up the story. Aaliyah finally moved. Slowly, gracefully, she wiped water from her eyes with the back of her hand. Her wedding ring caught the light, the same custom design David wore, the one he'd sketched himself during their engagement. The intertwined dragons symbolize their Korean and African-American heritage. I'd like to call my husband now, she said quietly, her voice carrying across the silent lobby. Your husband? Rebecca laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. This fantasy has gone far enough. Security, I want her removed immediately. She pulled out her own phone, fingers flying across the screen with theatrical efficiency. I'm documenting this for the police report. Attempted fraud, corporate harassment, criminal trespassing. Click, flash. Rebecca took photos from multiple angles. Aaliyah's wet face, her expensive Hermes bag, her business attire now clinging and stained. Each flash felt like another assault. Perfect evidence, Rebecca muttered, reviewing the images on her screen. Shows exactly what these people try to get away with when they think they can manipulate our executives. The crowd had grown to nearly 25 employees now. Lunch break was ending, but nobody moved toward the elevators. This was better than any streaming drama series. Should someone call Mr. Carter? Asked James, a junior developer with barely 3 months on the job. He was new enough to still believe in fairness and didn't understand the unspoken rules about challenging Rebecca Stone's authority. Absolutely not, Rebecca snapped, rounding on him like a lion. The CEO has real business to conduct, multi-million-dollar decisions to make. He doesn't need to be bothered by this spectacle. She gestured dismissively at Aaliyah, who stood with quiet dignity despite her humiliation. Water had stopped dripping, but dark stains covered her silk blouse. Her hair, professionally styled that morning for their anniversary surprise, hung in wet strands around her face. Ma'am, Jerome approached carefully, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe we could just verify. Jerome. Rebecca's voice turned ice cold, cutting through his words like a blade. Are you questioning my authority? My professional judgment? The security guard froze. He had 3 kids, 2 still in elementary school, a mortgage on a modest house in Queens, health insurance through Carter Tech that covered his wife's diabetes medication. He'd seen Rebecca destroy careers before. Subtle sabotage, negative performance reviews that came out of nowhere, mysterious budget cuts that eliminated positions just before Christmas. He looked at Aaliyah, really looked at her for the first time. The expensive bag, the custom jewelry, the way she carried herself even soaked and humiliated. Something familiar about her face, her posture. Then he looked at Rebecca, then at the 25 phones recording everything, then at the floor. No, ma'am, he said quietly, hating himself. Rebecca smiled triumphantly, sensing total victory. Good. Then escort this woman to the parking garage. Make sure she understands she's banned from all Carter Tech properties. Wait. Martha found her voice again, stepping forward with her tablet clutched against her chest. The visitor log shows... Shows what? Rebecca's eyes narrowed dangerously, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Martha's hands trembled visibly as she turned the screen toward Rebecca. An appointment. A. Washington, 3:15 p.m. CEO personal lunch meeting. It was scheduled 3 days ago. The lobby went dead quiet. Even the live stream comments seemed to pause. Rebecca snatched the tablet, scrolling through the appointment system with increasing desperation. There it was, clear as daylight. A. Washington scheduled for a 3:15 personal meeting with David Carter. The appointment included internal notes visible only to executive assistants. Anniversary surprise. Mrs. Carter bringing homemade lunch. Blocked 90 minutes. No interruptions. Mrs. Carter. Fake, Rebecca declared after a long moment, but her voice had lost its commanding edge. Anyone can hack our system and add fake appointments. These people are more sophisticated than you think. But doubt crept into her tone like poison. The appointment had been scheduled 3 days ago. It included David's dietary restrictions, his preferred conference room, even a note about clearing his afternoon schedule for quality time. Several employees leaned in, reading over Martha's shoulder. Whispers started spreading through the crowd like wildfire. That's really his wife, someone said. Oh God, oh no, said another. Rebecca's destroyed. This is going to be everywhere. 2 minutes remaining. Rebecca felt control slipping away like sand through her fingers. The crowd's energy had shifted completely. Phone cameras that had been capturing Aaliyah's humiliation now focused on Rebecca herself. The live stream comments turned against her. Lady's about to get fired. CEO's wife. This is crazy. Rebecca messed up bad. Fake appointments, fake photos, fake stories, Rebecca announced desperately, her voice climbing higher with each word. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These people will stop at nothing to manipulate successful men. But her voice lacked its earlier confidence. The appointment log was damning evidence. The internal notes were too specific, too detailed, too integrated into the company's systems to be fabricated. Aaliyah reached into her purse with steady hands and pulled out her phone. The lock screen showed a photo of her and David at last year's company Christmas party. Not just any photo, but the official company portrait that hung in the executive conference room upstairs. The one every employee had seen 100 times. I'm calling David now, she said calmly, her thumb hovering over his contact. No! Rebecca lunged forward, trying to grab the phone from Aaliyah's hands. I forbid you to disturb... The elevator dinged, everyone frozen. The soft mechanical sound echoed through the marble lobby like a gunshot. All 25 pairs of eyes turned toward the executive elevator, the one that only accessed the top 3 floors. The one reserved for C-suite executives and their guests. Rebecca's face went from red to white in seconds. The polished steel doors were sliding open. Time's up. David Parker stepped out of the elevator, adjusting his charcoal suit jacket. At 34, the Korean-American CEO moved with quiet confidence, earned through building Parker Tech from a garage startup to a $2.8 billion company. His custom wedding ring, matching dragons intertwined, caught the lobby's afternoon light. He expected to find his wife waiting by reception for their anniversary lunch. Instead, he found 25 employees clustered around something, phones held high like torches in the darkness. What's going on here? His voice carried natural authority, cutting through whispers and electronic beeping. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. David saw her immediately. Aaliyah stood in the center, water dripping from her hair onto marble floors. Her silk blouse clung wetly to her skin. Mascara streaked her cheeks in dark rivers. The handmade lunch container lay forgotten at her feet, silver wrapping paper torn and soggy. Time stopped. Aaliyah! His voice cracked with confusion. "Baby, what happened? Why are you—" He rushed toward her, corporate composure shattering. His hands found her face, thumbs gently wiping away water and smeared makeup. The gesture was instinctive, protective, unmistakably that of a devoted husband. "Who did this to you?" His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that carried across the entire lobby. The space held its collective breath. 25 phones continued recording, but silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. "I brought you lunch," Aaliyah whispered, her voice steady despite everything. "For our anniversary. She said people like me don't belong here." David's eyes swept the crowd methodically, cataloging every face, every witness to his wife's humiliation. His gaze landed on Rebecca Stone, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The HR director stood frozen, her empty water bottle still clutched in white-knuckled fingers. Her face had gone the color of ash, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. "She?" David's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that made seasoned executives tremble in board meetings. "She who?" Rebecca's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Around her, employees stepped back instinctively, creating distance as if she carried contagious disease. The circle expanded, leaving her isolated in the center of their judgment. Martha, the administrative assistant who had watched in horror for 20 minutes, found her voice first. "Mr. Parker, I tried to tell her. Ms. Stone threw water at your wife and called security to remove her. She said Mrs. Parker was a gold digger trying to manipulate you." David's jaw tightened visibly. He pulled his monogrammed handkerchief from his jacket pocket, DNA Forever, embroidered in elegant script, and began gently dabbing water from Aaliyah's face. The gesture was tender, intimate, unmistakably that of a devoted husband caring for his beloved wife. Every person in that lobby, every viewer watching the live stream, could see the genuine love and protective fury in his movements. "How long has this been going on?" he asked softly, his voice carefully controlled but vibrating with barely contained rage. 20 minutes, Aaliyah replied, her dignity intact despite the public humiliation. "I showed them our wedding photo, the appointment in the computer system. I told them repeatedly that I was your wife. She called me a liar, said I was photoshopping pictures to trick you." David's breathing changed, becoming deeper and more measured. Colleagues who'd worked with him for years recognized the signs, the slight tension in his shoulders, the careful modulation of his voice, the way his free hand clenched and unclenched. David Parker angry was infinitely more dangerous than David Parker shouting. His fury was ice-cold, calculated, and absolutely devastating. He looked up at the crowd, his gaze methodical and deliberate. The phones recording everything from multiple angles. The Instagram live stream now reaching 4,200 viewers and climbing rapidly. "Rebecca," he said, his voice carrying across the lobby like winter wind. "My office, now." "Mr. Parker, I can explain." Rebecca's words tumbled out desperately, her voice climbing higher with panic. She didn't follow proper protocols. Anyone could claim to be— "I said now." But David paused, looking down at his wife's stained blouse, her ruined hair, her quiet dignity maintained despite 20 minutes of racist abuse. Something shifted in his expression. "Actually, no," he said, his voice growing stronger. "We'll handle this right here, in front of everyone who witnessed what you did." He helped Aaliyah straighten, his arm encircling her waist protectively. Then he addressed the crowd with full authority. "For those of you who don't know, this is my wife, Aaliyah Washington Parker. We've been married 5 years as of today. This is our wedding anniversary. She has an MBA from Wharton, speaks 3 languages fluently, and volunteers with literacy programs every weekend." His voice gained strength with each word. "She came here today to surprise me with lunch she prepared at 5 a.m. before I left for morning conference calls. She brought homemade bulgogi, my favorite, wrapped in silver paper with a handwritten anniversary card." He gestured to the soggy container on the floor. Instead of being welcomed into the building her husband built, someone threw water in her face, called her a gold digger, and tried to have her arrested. Rebecca found her voice, desperation making it shrill. "David, I was protecting you." She didn't identify herself properly. "Anyone could walk in here claiming to be your wife." She didn't identify herself? David's eyebrows rose, his voice carrying dangerous incredulity. "With her appointment clearly listed in our computer system? With wedding photos displayed on my desk upstairs? With her name on the permanent visitor access list that you personally approved last year?" Rebecca's face crumbled as the logical holes in her defense became obvious to everyone present. "You processed her health insurance paperwork as my spouse. You've seen her at company Christmas parties, summer picnics, and board dinners." The crowd began murmuring, pieces clicking into place. Several employees nodded recognition. They remembered Aaliyah from company events, had seen her photos in David's office. "You didn't recognize her because you never truly saw her," David said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "You saw a black woman asking for access to power, and you decided she didn't deserve basic human dignity." The truth hung in the air like smoke. Around them, employees shifted uncomfortably, some looking ashamed of their own silence, others angry at what they'd witnessed. Martha stepped forward, her tablet clutched against her chest. "Mr. Parker, I have the security footage queued up and the appointment logs." "I don't need footage," David cut her off, his voice carrying to the live stream audience. "I have 25 witnesses and about 4,000 people watching this unfold in real time." He looked directly into the nearest phone camera, addressing the growing online audience. "This is David Parker, CEO of Parker Tech Solutions. What you've witnessed here today is completely unacceptable. It violates every principle our company claims to represent, and it ends right now." He turned back to Rebecca, who seemed to physically shrink with each word. "Rebecca Stone, you are terminated from Parker Tech Solutions, effective immediately." "David, please," Rebecca begged, her career crashing down around her. "It was a misunderstanding. I was just being careful." "Careful?" Aaliyah spoke for the first time since David's arrival, her voice soft but carrying clearly across the silent lobby. "You were being careful when you called me a gold digger? When you said you people don't belong here? When you threw water in my face?" Rebecca opened her mouth, but no sound came out. There was no defense for the indefensible. But David wasn't finished. His protective fury had transformed into something larger. Corporate accountability that would reshape the entire company. "There's something else everyone here should know," he said, his arm tightening around Aaliyah's shoulders. "My wife has been conducting research for the past 6 months, working with workplace equality nonprofits, documenting patterns of discrimination in corporate hiring practices." He paused, letting the implications sink in while the live stream audience exploded with speculation. This wasn't a random visit. This was a test, and Parker Tech Solutions just failed spectacularly. Rebecca's legs nearly gave out. Around her, employees exchanged glances of horror and fascination, suddenly understanding they'd witnessed something much bigger than workplace rudeness. "Aaliyah has documentation of systematic discriminatory hiring practices, biased interview processes, and the deliberate exclusion of qualified minority candidates. Today's incident isn't isolated. It's symptomatic of a cancer that's been growing in our company for 2 years." He looked directly at Rebecca, his voice carrying the weight of corporate judgment. "You've been filtering out diversity at the HR screening level, rejecting qualified candidates before they could even reach department managers. Aaliyah has the statistics and legal evidence to prove systematic discrimination." The live stream comments exploded with reactions. The story was spreading beyond social media to news blogs, business publications, and legal networks. Aaliyah reached into her still damp purse and pulled out a waterproof folder. She'd come prepared for this moment. Over the past 18 months, Parker Tech Solutions received 847 qualified applications from black candidates. Of those applications, 731 were rejected at the initial HR screening level. She opened the folder with steady hands, revealing professionally printed charts and graphs. During that same period, 1,203 white candidates applied for similar positions. Only 312 were rejected at HR screening. The statistical probability of this disparity occurring through random chance is less than 0.003%. The numbers hit the lobby like a physical blow. Several employees gasped audibly. The mathematical proof of systematic racism was undeniable, overwhelming, legally damning. This research was conducted in partnership with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, David added, his voice carrying the authority of federal backing. The documentation is legally admissible evidence. Rebecca collapsed into the nearest chair, her body finally giving out under the weight of revelation. 22 years in human resources, a six-figure salary, stock options, all evaporating because she couldn't see past her own prejudices. Every single person you discriminated against had families to support, bills to pay, dreams to achieve, Aaliyah continued, her voice gaining strength. The only difference between them and the candidates you approved was the color of their skin. She looked around the lobby, making eye contact with employees who had watched her humiliation. The difference between me and them is that I have a CEO husband to protect me, but I refuse to let that protection be wasted on just one person when systematic change could help hundreds. David felt a surge of pride for the woman beside him. Brilliant, courageous, transforming personal pain into societal progress. Parker Tech Solutions will implement immediate and comprehensive reforms, he announced to the crowd and the live stream audience. New hiring protocols with blind resume screening, diverse interview panels for all positions, third-party auditing of our recruitment processes. The crowd murmured with approval, but David wasn't finished. We're also establishing a $10 million fund for workplace discrimination research and legal assistance for victims of employment bias. This isn't just about fixing our company, it's about changing the entire industry. $10 million. The number resonated through the lobby and across social media. This wasn't performative gesture. This was serious financial commitment to systematic change. Furthermore, we're creating partnerships with Howard University, Morehouse College, and Spelman College to establish paid internship pipelines. If we've been systematically excluding talent, we're going to systematically seek it out. He checked his watch. 3:47 p.m. 32 minutes since Rebecca had first confronted his wife with racist assumptions. 32 minutes that had transformed a personal anniversary surprise into a corporate revolution. Ms. Stone, he said, his voice carrying finality, security will escort you from the building immediately. Your access cards are deactivated, your company accounts are frozen. As two security guards approached Rebecca, phones continued recording her walk of shame. The woman who had wielded power like a weapon against the vulnerable was now powerless herself. The live stream had reached 8,500 viewers and climbing. Parker Tech discrimination was trending nationally alongside #workplace justice and #corporate accountability. David Parker had just turned his wife's humiliation into a masterclass in leadership and accountability. And Aaliyah Washington Parker had just become the face of workplace equity for millions of viewers worldwide. Executive Conference Room, 4:15 p.m. The mahogany table stretched 12 feet across the corner office, surrounded by leather chairs that had hosted billion-dollar deals. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown, where news vans were already gathering in the parking lot below. David sat at the head of the table, his laptop open to cascading notifications. Aaliyah occupied the chair to his right, now wearing his spare dress shirt over her stained blouse. Across from them sat the emergency crisis team. General Counsel Lisa Park, VP of Operations James Rivera, and Chief Financial Officer Michael Torres. The numbers are staggering, Lisa said, reviewing legal documents on her tablet. We're facing potential class action lawsuits from 731 rejected candidates. At an average settlement of $75,000 per case, we're looking at $54.8 million in exposure. Michael winced, running calculations on his laptop. That doesn't include punitive damages, legal fees, or the drop in stock price. We're down 12% since the live stream went viral an hour ago. James leaned forward, stress evident in his voice. The board is demanding answers. Rebecca Stone was hired on my recommendation 2 years ago. Her efficiency ratings were excellent. 96% of applicants screened out at initial review. Efficiency, David said coldly. That's what we called systematic discrimination. Efficiency. Aaliyah opened her research folder, spreading charts across the table. The patterns are undeniable. Rebecca rejected qualified black candidates at a rate 347% higher than equally qualified white candidates. She used coded language in rejection notes. Not a cultural fit, lacks polish, might not thrive in our environment. She pulled out a specific file. Marcus Williams, MIT computer science graduate, 3.9 GPA, internships at Google and Facebook. Rebecca's note, seems aggressive in interview style, might intimidate colleagues. David read the file, his jaw tightening. What was aggressive about his interview? He asked about advancement opportunities and diversity initiatives, Aaliyah replied. Standard questions from an ambitious candidate. Lisa shook her head grimly. That's textbook discrimination. The EEOC will have a field day with language like that. Michael pulled up financial projections on the wall screen. Here's what we're facing. $54.8 million in potential settlements, $15 million in legal fees, estimated $200 million in lost market cap from reputation damage. The numbers hung in the air like a toxic cloud. That's just the financial cost, James added. We've lost credibility with diversity-focused clients, potential employees, and the investment community. Tech companies live or die by their ability to attract top talent. David stood, walking to the window where protesters were beginning to gather with signs, Justice for Aaliyah, and End Corporate Racism. 2 years, he said quietly. Rebecca operated this system for 2 years, and we didn't catch it. The metrics looked good, James defended weakly. High efficiency, low hiring costs, quick turnarounds. Because she was rejecting qualified candidates before they reached you, Aaliyah interrupted. Your department never saw the talent she filtered out. She pulled out another chart showing hiring patterns by department. Engineering, sales, marketing, all requesting diverse candidate pools, all wondering why HR kept sending the same demographic profile. Rebecca was bottlenecking diversity before it reached decision-makers. Lisa reviewed legal precedent on her tablet. Griggs v. Duke Power Company, 1971. The Supreme Court ruled that employment practices with disparate impact on protected classes violate Title VII, even without intent to discriminate. Meaning? Michael asked. Meaning intent doesn't matter. Impact does. And our impact is documented, quantified, and live-streamed to 5 million people. David returned to the table, his decision made. What's our legal exposure if we settle immediately versus fighting? Lisa consulted her notes. Immediate settlement, $60–80 million total. Fighting in court, potentially $150–300 million if we lose, plus years of negative publicity. Timeline for settlements? 6 months to negotiate individual cases. But David, there's something else. Lisa hesitated. The Department of Justice called 20 minutes ago. They're opening a civil rights investigation. Silence filled the room. Federal investigation means congressional hearings, media scrutiny, regulatory oversight, Michael said. This goes way beyond financial settlements. James looked pale. Other companies will distance themselves from us. Partnerships, contracts, vendor relationships, everything becomes suspect. Aaliyah leaned back in her chair, watching the corporate machinery grapple with consequences of choices made in their name. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. My research wasn't limited to Parker Tech. All eyes turned to her. I documented similar patterns at Technova, Digital Dynamics, and Innovate Corp. Rebecca Stone's practices aren't unique. They're systemic across the industry. David stared at his wife. You're saying this is bigger than our company? I'm saying Rebecca learned these techniques somewhere. She networked with other HR directors, attended industry conferences, shared best practices for efficient screening. Lisa's face went white. You're describing an industry-wide conspiracy to discriminate. I'm describing an industry-wide culture that prioritized efficiency over equity, and Rebecca was a perfect product of that culture. Michael pulled up news feeds on his laptop. CNN, MSNBC, Fox Business, everyone's covering this. Parker Tech discrimination is trending alongside hashtag systemic bias and corporate accountability. James checked his phone. LinkedIn is exploding with stories from other tech workers. People sharing their own discrimination experiences, praising Aaliyah's courage, demanding transparency from their employers. The conversation has moved beyond us, David realized. We've become a catalyst for industry-wide examination. Lisa nodded grimly. Which means we can lead the change or be dragged along by it. But we can't go back to business as usual. David looked at his wife. Brilliant, courageous, still wearing his shirt over her water-stained blouse. She had transformed personal humiliation into corporate accountability, individual pain into systemic change. Recommendations? He asked the room. Full transparency, Lisa said immediately. Release Aaliyah's research, cooperate completely with DOJ investigation, implement immediate reforms. Preemptive settlements, Michael added. Control the financial damage, show good faith to regulators and the public. Leadership change, James said reluctantly. I hired Rebecca. The board will want accountability at the executive level. David considered each recommendation. Through the window, the protest crowd had grown to nearly 200 people. News helicopters circled overhead. Social media had turned individual discrimination into a movement. Here's what we're going to do, he said finally. Full transparency, immediate settlements, complete cooperation with federal investigators. He looked at James. You're not losing your job. You made a hiring mistake based on incomplete information. But you're overseeing the complete overhaul of our HR practices. Thank you, James said, relief evident. Lisa, draft settlement offers for all documented cases. Generous offers. We're not negotiating down. Speed matters more than savings. Understood. Michael, prepare financial disclosures. The market needs to understand our commitment to change, not just our liability exposure. Already working on it. David turned to his wife. Aaliyah, I'm offering you a formal position. Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer reporting directly to me with budget authority and board access. She smiled. I accept, but I have conditions. Name them. Anonymous reporting system for all employees, quarterly diversity audits with public reporting, and partnership with NAACP Legal Defense Fund to monitor our progress. Done. Lisa looked up from her legal notes. There's one more issue. Rebecca Stone is threatening to sue for wrongful termination. She claims the water incident was taken out of context. David's expression hardened. Context. She threw water at my wife and called her a gold digger. What context justifies that? She's claiming emotional distress from the public shaming, says the live stream destroyed her career prospects. Aaliyah laughed, not bitterly but with genuine amazement. She destroyed her own career by discriminating against 731 people. The live stream just documented it. Her lawyer is arguing that she followed company policies and had no way to know you were the CEO's wife, Lisa continued. She had multiple ways to know, David replied. The appointment system, the visitor log, the photos on my desk. She chose not to look because she'd already decided Aaliyah didn't deserve basic respect. Michael checked the news feeds again. Rebecca's lawsuit threat is backfiring. Social media is calling it victim blaming and doubling down on discrimination. Let her sue, David said firmly. We have 25 witnesses, security footage, and documented evidence of systematic bias, plus 5 million people who watched her throw water at a woman asking for basic dignity. Lisa nodded. I'll prepare our countersuit for discriminatory practices, hostile work environment, and damage to corporate reputation. The crisis meeting was winding down, but the real work was just beginning. Parker Tech had 48 hours to announce comprehensive reforms before the DOJ investigation went public. One last thing, David said, looking around the table. This story, Aaliyah's story, is going to inspire other people to speak up about workplace discrimination. We need to be ready to support them, not just protect ourselves. He stood, helping his wife gather her research materials. We're going to become the company we should have been all along, and we're going to help other companies do the same. As they prepared to leave, Aaliyah looked back at the executives still processing the magnitude of change ahead. Touching stories like mine happen every day in corporate America, she said. The only difference is most people don't have a CEO husband to protect them, but they deserve the same dignity, the same opportunity, the same justice. That's why we're not just fixing Parker Tech. We're changing the standard for everyone. Outside the conference room windows, the sun was setting over a company that would never be the same. 3 months later, Parker Tech Solutions. The bronze plaque beside the main entrance gleamed in morning sunlight. Parker Tech Solutions, Certified Best Place to Work for Diversity 2024. Digital screens in the lobby displayed real-time metrics. Current workforce, 47% women, 34% people of color. Aaliyah stood in her corner office as Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, reviewing quarterly reports. Her $15 million budget had transformed the company from discrimination liability to industry leader. The new system, Martha, now Director of Inclusive Recruitment, demonstrated their blind resume screening to DOJ investigators. Names, photos, and demographic identifiers are automatically removed before managers review applications. The results were remarkable. Black candidate advancement increased 340%, Hispanic candidates up 280%, women in technical roles up 190%. When managers couldn't see demographics, they focused purely on merit, Martha explained. Our new hires consistently outperform previous cohorts. Financial victory. CFO Michael Torres presented stunning financial results. Diverse teams generate 23% more revenue per project. Customer satisfaction improved 31%. Employee retention increased 45%. Saving $8.2 million annually. Settlement costs totaled $67 million for 731 discrimination cases. But improved performance generated $94 million in additional revenue. They didn't just recover costs, they exceeded them. Cultural transformation. Jerome, the security guard caught between conscience and authority, now served as employee advocate. The anonymous reporting system he managed logged 247 incidents in month 1, all resolved within 72 hours. People aren't afraid anymore, he told investigators. They know their voices matter. Employee surveys revealed profound change. 94% felt valued and respected, up from 67%. Comments reflected the shift. This is what corporate leadership should look like. Industry impact. The Parker Standard became shorthand for workplace equity. 12 major corporations adopted similar reforms. Harvard Business Review featured their model. Congressional hearings led to new federal guidelines. Aaliyah consulted with 47 companies implementing their system. Her research had sparked legislation in 12 states requiring diversity reporting from federal contractors. Rebecca's consequence. Rebecca's wrongful termination lawsuit was dismissed. Unable to find HR employment, she enrolled in diversity certification programs. Her public apology became required reading in business ethics courses. I let unconscious biases override professional judgment, she wrote. I caused immeasurable harm to qualified individuals who deserved better. Rebecca now worked at a nonprofit for $42,000 annually, compared to her former $180,000 salary. The consequence was severe, but the growth was genuine. Federal Resolution DOJ agent Sarah Rodriguez concluded her investigation. Parker Tech has exceeded all compliance requirements. The comprehensive reforms demonstrate genuine commitment to change, not merely legal compliance. The federal investigation that could have resulted in massive penalties instead became a model for other companies. "We're recommending Parker Tech as a best practices partner," Rodriguez announced. Personal victory. That evening, David and Aaliyah reviewed the day's achievements. University partnerships had hired 89 interns from historically black colleges. Retention rate, 97%. Their personal humiliation had become hope for millions facing workplace discrimination. The hashtag #ParkerTechStandard trended as companies announced their own diversity initiatives. Lasting change. Parker Tech's transformation sparked national conversation about workplace discrimination. Business schools taught their case study. The company that nearly collapsed from bias lawsuits became the gold standard for inclusion. These touching stories, these real-life stories, they matter, Aaliyah told David. When people see discrimination documented and consequences delivered, they understand change is possible. Inside Parker Tech's headquarters, 2,847 employees went home knowing their workplace valued dignity, rewarded merit, and protected rights. 20 minutes of humiliation had sparked 3 months of transformation. The changes would last generations. 1 year later, Aaliyah Washington Parker stood at the podium of the National Civil Rights Conference, addressing 3,000 business leaders. Behind her, a screen displayed Parker Tech's transformation metrics: 47% diverse workforce, $94 million revenue increase, 97% employee satisfaction. "Workplace discrimination isn't just morally wrong," she said, her voice carrying across the silent auditorium. "It's economically devastating. Companies lose billions annually by rejecting talent based on bias instead of merit." In the audience, CEOs took notes. The woman who had been humiliated in a corporate lobby had become the most sought-after voice in workplace equity. The ripple effect. Parker Tech's story had transformed from viral scandal to business case study. Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton now taught the Parker Standard in their MBA programs. 12 Fortune 500 companies had implemented identical reforms. Rebecca Stone's discrimination had inadvertently sparked the largest workplace equity movement in decades. Federal legislation now required diversity reporting from all companies with government contracts. "Every person in this room has witnessed workplace bias," Aaliyah continued. "The question isn't whether discrimination exists, it's whether you have the courage to document it, report it, and demand change." David watched from the front row, pride evident in his expression. Their marriage had survived the public scrutiny, emerging stronger through shared purpose. Black stories matter. The live stream that captured Aaliyah's humiliation had been viewed 47 million times across platforms. Comment sections became forums for sharing similar experiences. "This happened to me at Microsoft." "I was rejected by Goldman Sachs after perfect interviews." Finally, someone with the power to fight back. These touching stories, these real-life stories, created a database of discrimination experiences that researchers used to identify patterns across industries. Personal growth. Jerome, the security guard who had faced an impossible choice, now ran employee advocacy programs at 12 companies. His story of choosing conscience over fear inspired thousands of workers to speak up about bias. Martha, the administrative assistant who had found her voice, became Parker Tech's VP of Employee Relations. Her transformation from silent witness to active advocate demonstrated that anyone could become an agent of change. Even Rebecca Stone had found redemption through consequence. Her nonprofit work helping other companies identify unconscious bias had become a model for restorative justice in corporate settings. The bigger picture. Parker Tech's financial success proved that diversity wasn't charity, it was competitive advantage. Their diverse teams consistently outperformed industry benchmarks in innovation, customer satisfaction, and revenue generation. "We didn't just survive discrimination lawsuits," David had told Wall Street analysts. "We transformed liability into leadership, controversy into competitive edge." Stock price had increased 67% since the lobby incident. Investor confidence grew with each quarterly diversity report, showing continued improvement. Systemic change. The Department of Justice now used Parker Tech as a model for companies facing discrimination charges. Instead of lengthy legal battles, businesses could adopt Parker standard reforms for reduced penalties and federal recognition. Aaliyah's consulting firm had helped 89 companies implement similar transformations. Her research methods became standard practice for identifying systemic bias in hiring, promotion, and workplace culture. Call to action. As Aaliyah concluded her conference speech, she looked directly into the cameras broadcasting live to millions of viewers. "Workplace discrimination happens every day in corporate America. Most victims don't have CEO husbands to protect them, but they deserve the same dignity, the same opportunity, the same justice." Her voice strengthened with conviction. If you've experienced discrimination, document it, record it, share your story. Your voice can change entire corporate cultures. She paused, making eye contact across the auditorium. If you've witnessed bias and stayed silent, remember that neutrality enables injustice. Use your privilege to protect those who can't protect themselves. The audience rose in sustained applause. The legacy. That evening, Aaliyah and David reviewed social media responses to her speech. #SpeakUpForJustice was trending worldwide. Comments poured in from workers sharing their own discrimination stories, companies announcing new diversity initiatives, and students declaring careers in workplace equality. 20 minutes in our lobby changed everything, David mused, scrolling through responses. "No," Aaliyah corrected gently. 20 minutes revealed what was already broken. The change came from refusing to accept it. Their story had become larger than personal vindication. It was proof that individual courage could spark systemic transformation, that documented injustice could demand accountability, and that love could overcome institutional bias. Final message. What would you have done in Aaliyah's situation? When faced with discrimination, humiliation, and the choice between silence and speaking truth to power, share this story with someone who needs to see that quiet strength can move mountains. Comment below with your own experiences, good or bad, because Black stories, life stories, touching stories like these create the change someone else desperately needs. Subscribe to Black Voices Speak for more real-life stories of resilience, justice, and transformation. Remember, the most powerful weapon against workplace discrimination isn't anger, it's documentation, strategic action, and the refusal to let bias win. Your story could be next. Your voice could create the change that transforms not just one company, but an entire industry.